Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Butchester. You know what I like to do on the show. I want to enlighten you. I want to inspire you. I want to empower you. Well, Scripture reminds us that the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And today we want to get you fired up about your faith. Now, faith means so much to different people. It's something you do. It's something you are. It's something you live. It's something you breathe. It's something that you show. So faith is not only a noun. It can be an adjective, an adverb. Come on now. It can be a verb. We need to put our faith into action. So, you know what I'm going to tell you to do. Go on, get comfy, get cozy, get your coffee or get your tea, because we are about to get started. Good morning, Ian. Thank you so much for being on with me today.
Hi, Dr. Angela. How are you?
I am well. Thank you so much for coming on Daily Spark today and sharing your book, Faith, with us.
Your pleasure.
Now, before we get started talking about your book, which of course I want to do, there may be one or two folks out there who are unfamiliar with who you are or with your work. So, what makes Ian Ian? What have you? What do you think has happened in your life that has caused you to be the person that you are today?
Well, Dr. Angela, I would say just growing up in Africa and living this life that we have here. I grew up in Zimbabwe, formerly Rhodesia, and our youth was sort of controlled by a civil war, and I think we had a lot of hardship. But coming through that and eventually moving down to South Africa, it opened many paths for me. And I'm quite happily married, living in Cape Town with my two sons, and I'm very blessed to be here on the southern tip of Africa.
Absolutely, absolutely. It is so true that what we go through, be it good, bad, or neutral, it helps mold us into the people that we are today. Now, being an author, is that something that you always wanted to do, or did you find that it was just the next thing on your life path?
Well, from an early age, I was drawing a lot and illustrating, and I started off just illustrating children's books. Had a few of them published without too much success, and then, of course, I became a Christian about 25 years ago, and everything started thereafter. So I'm truly blessed that the Lord has used me, and that's how it's going to go forward from here. So a little bit of the secular work before, yeah.
Now, what is, of course, I know you can't give it all away, all of the details, but in general, what does your book talk about? What does it address?
Faith talks about a person's ability to leave their comfort zone, to venture out into an area of their own life that they need to try and push the buttons a little bit harder. We seem to be living such a comfortable life these days, and we need to be tested. We need to be tested, and I think we need to be tested in our faith. We need to be tested properly, not just superficially.
Now, did you have a particular thing that inspired you to move forward or motivated you to decide that now is the time for this book?
Absolutely, 100%. I was without work and obviously still continuing going to our church services, our local church, and we were very privileged to listen to a missionary that had been traveling around the world, mostly up in North Africa. And I came back home. My wife told me the story, and we got a script of it. And from there on, it was just the fast pace to get this thing finished as quickly as possible, because God moves people and he uses you in the way that you are capable of being used. So I was just a tool in his hands.
Now, would you say that your book is a story that's about yourself, or would you say that it is a book about how we can see ourselves in others? What's your take on it?
Well, you know what? I'm trying to practice the actual words written in the book myself, and I find it very difficult. It's very easy to be a hypocrite, and it's very difficult to test your own faith. So, yeah, it's very, very difficult. So I would like to try and follow my own words, and I'm trying to do that as hard as possible. And I'd like to tempt other people to try and get into the norm of helping other people and testing themselves all of the time. So that is a goal. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. You're right. We should always try to press ourselves or push ourselves or, motivate ourselves to keep going. Every day is an opportunity to be a little better than we were the day before. So I have to agree with you on that. Now, you mentioned the missionary, doing missionary work. How did you hear about the missionary and his family when writing about the book?
Basically, this missionary leaves Cape Town on an annual basis, and he goes up to the Middle East and to the Far East and things like that. And he tries to preach the Word of God as we know it as normal Christians. And he had such a compelling story when he came back that I realized that he had gone out of his way to help someone less fortunate than himself. And he had reaped the reward at the end of the day. And to put that in writing and to capture that moment is, well, I suppose it's a privilege.
I can definitely understand that. It is such a beautiful thing when we see that someone is helping another person, and it is quite selfless. It is just a beautiful display of that agape love that we read about in Scripture, that you really and truly are just trying to be that example of Christ inside of you. It truly is beautiful. I love it. Now, you mentioned a little earlier that you liked to that you were doing some illustrations, or you liked that media of art. Did you also choose to not only be the author of your book, but the illustrator of faith as well?
Well, the Lord chooses his own time and his own place. And if you are willing and able, the emphasis on the word willing, then you can't say no. If the circumstance arises, you have to put your hand up and say, yes, that is me. And in the beginning, it was quite difficult to try and comprehend what I'd started. But in the end, ended up being very easy.
I love it. The fact that you have taken on, two very big parts of the responsibility of making sure that the book is proper and true. I want to ask you just a few questions along that same vein. While you were writing, did you find that you needed to be in a particular environment? Did you need it to be quiet, or did you mind the hustle and bustle of the day being round about you? What type of space did you need when you were writing?
Most of the time I would be sitting in a restaurant, having a cup of coffee, and sitting out and just gazing out at the world around. And I have my Bible close by, and I would be looking for inspiration to open my Bible up and to read something out of it, and trying to find the words to put down in a powerful and short manner that means something to any genre of person reading it, young, old, people that can only understand the pictures. So that process, it takes a lot of divine intervention, because I believe that I'm not the best writer, but to find the words to put down and to convey them in God's method is based on prayer.
I love that. That's right. Being able to just hear God and say, when he says, write this, don't write that, take that out, add this, do this, do that. It really does say a lot about the maturity of your faith to be able to walk that path and to know what you can and cannot do. And that's an awesome example. My listeners have heard me say that so many times we need to stop depending on our own power, our own sense of self, and allow God to move, because it's an amazing thing when we get out of our own way.
You're quite correct, yeah.
You kind of touched on it in your last answer, and that is the intended reader. When you were writing, did you have in your mind's eye a particular age group or span of ages that you were writing to or for?
I asked that question of myself, and if my instinct was to go and to write a children's book, but it didn't work out that way, because a person that can read in the English language can read the book and understand the text and the storyline. And if a person can't read at all, if they are totally illiterate, the way that I've drawn the pictures, one page per picture and one sentence per page, basically, or one paragraph, you can actually follow the story without being able to read. You should be able to follow the story by looking at the pictures. You get the gist of the whole story. So it just happened to be that it came, and people that have read it, from old people, the elderly, through to people of my age, which I like to think that I'm still quite young, and children, and children, they all seem to get the same message, and that is not on my doing. I don't think you have to be far more intelligent than I am to conjure that up.
But that just proves the awesomeness, like you said earlier. You listen to what God told you to do, and in doing that, even in its simplicity, it still speaks volumes to those who read it. And if all of the age groups get the same message, then I think that you have conveyed it properly. That is amazing. I love it. But you said something that really hit me a particular way, and that is that you made the book quite simple for anyone to be able to read. And I think about the people who are perhaps just learning to speak English. We have adults that are learning a new language, and I think we forget that they don't start off, reading these 300-page novels, but they do need a very easy book initially to be able to learn to read, or for the person who has perhaps had a trauma and is learning how to read all over again. That it's just beautiful that you were mindful in that way, so that even more people will be able to utilize it. I love it. Well, it is time for us to go to break, but before we do, Ian, could you please remind everyone what is the title of your book, where can we get a copy, and how do we stay in contact with you?
Okay, well, firstly, the title of my book is Faith, just straightforward Faith. It's available through Amazon, Google Books, Barnes & Noble, and, of course, through the publisher who was generous enough to publish the book for me from Westboro Press in the United States. As an e-book, it's also available. The price is very, very reasonable. I think at the moment it's going for $3.99. And as a soft copy, which can be ordered online for just under $17. I think it's very reasonable as an e-book and a soft cover.
Alrighty, listeners, now you know where you can get a copy of the book. We'll be back right after this.
Hi everyone, Dr. Angela here. Did you know that Daily Spark is now on Facebook? That's right, you can visit with me at facebook.com/Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I want to know more about what you're thinking. I'd love to know which interview did you find the most entertaining or the most informative. I want to talk to you, and I want you to be able to talk to me. Simply visit facebook.com/Daily Spark with Dr. Angela.
Discovery. No, just a sec.
What would it look like if we listened more? Could the right voice, the right set of words, bring us all just a little closer? Get us to open up? Even push us further? It could, if we took the time to listen. The most inspiring minds, the most compelling stories. Download Audible and listen for a change.
And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Butchester. My guest today is Ian Wanliss, and we are talking about his book, Faith. Now, I know that we all have those moments that will try our faith, test our faith, but we all need to make sure that we are doing something daily, and that is walking in our faith. Well, Ian, my next question for you is, in your book, Faith, you write about Simon, who left his massive haul of fish to follow Jesus. Why do you think that this is relevant in today's world, especially during the pandemic of COVID-19?
Okay, that's an interesting question. Thank you. We don't look back now and think we can go to Ocean Basket and order a nice plate of fish or something, and it just arrives on our table. It's just trawlers out there in the ocean hauling massive nets of fish. Yeah, but I just try and put myself in Simon's shoes, and what he probably had on the beach after he had his nets pulled in was enough food to feed maybe 5 or 6 different families in that area. It wasn't just for his small family. So this was his week's wages. It was more than just a day's fishing. This was a week's wages. It was a massive haul of fish. And Jesus said, Simon, you must follow me to become a fisher of men. And for him to just leave that, it left a lot more than just the fish on the beach. It left all of the codependents and everybody that was structured to him. There's more to it. There's more to it than just him dropping his problems or something. He actually had to make a life-changing decision for himself and for many other people. So I have this dilemma, and I wonder who talks to me, because Simon was lucky, because Jesus himself spoke to Simon. But who talks to us? How do we get that word? Is it via SMS or WhatsApp? I don't think so. So I find myself walking past a guy in the street. Yeah, walking past a guy in the street who's really just less fortunate than myself. And for a moment, I want to stop and help him. And then another moment, I'll walk on, and then I think, I've gone too far. It's pointless turning back. He'll probably just use the money for something else. But that moment of hesitation, I believe God is talking to you to say, stop. Give the guy a hand. Give him a word of confidence.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You can't just walk past.
Mm-hmm. You cannot.
So I think,
wow.
I think Simon decided right there and then, it's time to go. It's time to move. And he made a difference.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know, absolutely. I think you're presenting it in a way that has made people think. I think for so many people, they think of maybe he was the disgruntled fisherman, you know, when you get to that moment where you're tired and you're fed up and you don't want to do this anymore. So he just gladly said, you're right, sure, I'll go follow Jesus. That has to be easier. But absolutely, that was not the case. So you're right. All of those worldly securities that we've come to depend on, he gave all of that up. Such a brave and radical thought there. I love it. I love it. Now, as far as your goal, you know, let me not miss out on the other thing that you said, that we do need to stop. Holy Spirit does speak to us throughout our day, and when we see that person that needs our help, we should act upon those promptings. Thank you for that reminder, because I've heard other people say, oh, they're going to use the money and they're going to go buy alcohol, or they're going to go, you know, do something that they shouldn't do. That isn't for us to decide. Our prompting is to help the person who is in need. Yeah. Thank you.
Who are we to judge? Who are we to judge, Dr. Angela?
Absolutely. And I think that we get caught up in that filter, you know, thinking that we are the superior one because we have a means for that day. But who knows what tomorrow can bring or would bring. I think about the people here in the States that during a particular time of year, it's tornado season in the Midwest, or it's hurricane season on the West Coast, and your home, your business could be totally destroyed. And yet, at that moment, you are at your weakest, and you are depending on someone out of their loving kindness to assist you. So we all have a moment where we could be next. So you are so right. Now, for someone who says, go ahead.
I just think that there's so many people that hesitate, and there is always somebody less fortunate. Doesn't matter what position you are in. Mm-hmm. And too many people just hesitate based on, I think, selfish pride or something. And we need to reach out. There's so many people around the world that have lost their work from COVID. And who better to help than people who have a conscience and can put their pride away and work in the name of God.
I have to agree with you on that. And you know, there's almost an urgency that builds up in your spirit. There is a pressing there. There is an alarm that goes off, and you just know, I have to do something. I must do something. I remember when my son first purchased his truck. He has a Dodge Ram, one of those very kind of lifted, not super lifted, but, you know, it's a truck that's high. It's made.
Lucky him.
It's higher than the
lucky him.
Yeah, and I love it. Poor mom needs to use the little step, that little, the extra little bar at the bottom
I know.
to get in it. But God bless him, he's young, so he could do it. And I asked him, I said, now that we're on the East Coast, would you be willing to help? And he said, if there was a flood and someone needed my assistance, he says, I would not hesitate without a doubt. If the Cajun Navy needs me, then there I will be. But I think that comes with who you are. How you're talking about it now. Who are we to judge? We have to step in. He has that type of response as well. If me having this truck means that I can save someone's life from a hurricane, then that life shall be saved because I'm willing to go. I love that you are prompting us to be that type of person. Thank you. So
can I ask you a question? Can I ask you a question?
Of course.
When you speak to your son next time, and he has helped somebody out, right? Mm-hmm. And you ask him, have you helped somebody out? And his reply to you is no. Then he is the true helper, because God said, don't let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. You don't have to boast about the help that you give. You don't have to shout it out. So we'll put him to the test and see if he'll answer that question. And if he boasts about it, then the method was probably right, but the foundation may not be. Yeah.
No, I totally understand what you're saying, and he's not that type of person, and I tell everyone, it's not me, it's him. It's him. It's who God has called him to be, and you are so right. We have so many people that are just trying to do it for social media, and they're not doing it because
that's
they
ridiculous.
Feel that's all them to do it. I agree with you on that.
Well, this book, Faith. If my sort of thoughts somewhere in the early days was, I'd love a rich person to grab this book and just read it, and then just feel so guilty, and then put it in a wrapper in a present paper or something, and give it to someone that's less fortunate than themselves. So maybe they learn about it, and then the person down the line gets hope. And the whole circle is changed, and it's just in the words of God. It's God forcing somebody to put the words. Yeah.
Now, speaking of how you should read the book, and thank you for presenting and giving us that idea. What a beautiful thing to do. Do you suggest that the reader read it from cover to cover, page one to page next? Or can they pick up the book and start reading anywhere? What's your suggestion on that?
Look, I would say that a person that will afford the book could sit down with their children, young children, and read it to them bedtime story, one chapter at a time, and let the chapter sink in so that the kids ask the questions the next day. Why did he do that? Why didn't he do that? An adult will read the book in 45 minutes, absolutely. And a less fortunate person would probably understand the pictures and hold on to the book and maybe try and color them in or something like that. So it depends on if you really are bold and you think that you can handle the punchline, you go ahead and read it in 45 minutes. And if the Spirit moves in you, then that's your own doing. You set yourself up.
I love it. I like that suggestion. Read it.
Try to handle the heat.
Yes.
Yeah.
If you want to do it, go ahead. But
go ahead, boy.
But I love it. I love it. Now, for so many authors that I talk to, they know that this is not their only work. Meaning that not only do they aspire to write, one more book, but they have several books in them. They even perhaps may have written some other books. Tell us about your life as an author. Have you written other books Do you wish to continue to write?
Yeah, as I say, I started doing children's books, and I had 4 published children's books many years ago. And then I got involved in my design business and things like that, doing interior design. And then, of course, the Christian world came upon me. And obviously, there's a sequel to this book, Faith, which is called Courage. And I'm busy writing and going ahead, and I don't know where it's going to go. The Lord is opening doors all the time, and I don't have that market set out. It's not there. I've got to be honest about it. I'm not sitting down and trying to make a market for something. It's not based on an entirely true story, but it is so moving. And then another publisher in the United States has offered to publish the book for me, so I must just carry on writing, and it shouldn't be too long before it's done. It's called Courage, and I suppose it's going to be a sequel to Faith, and presumably the last one in the trilogy will be Perseverance. So it just has to come, and I have to get down and do the remaining illustrations, and it has nothing to do with the first story, but yet they are so intertwined. I just have to do it. And the more time I get, and I can make time. I will make time and finish it properly.
I think that is just amazing. And you know, how many of us need to be reminded to have courage in all things that we do, especially those things that God has called us to do. Well, Ian Wanliss, thank you so much for spending time with me here on Daily Spark and sharing about your book. I think today I can truly say that you have enlightened, inspired, and empowered our audience. Thank you so much for encouraging our listeners today.
It's only a pleasure, and I really appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. Well, listeners, you know, of course, you can get a copy of the book in Amazon and where books are sold. As always, may the Lord continue to shine his face upon you. May you receive his grace and his mercy in all that you do. Until next time, everyone, remember that you are blessed in the Lord. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.